The purpose of this video is to help you guys understand what a jack rafter is, how to figure out the length of the common rafter, and how to lay it out and cut it out for your small roof systems. So first of all, let's look at what the jack rafter is. So the jack rafters go from your top plate, similar to the common, and they go up and they connect to your hip. So the only difference between a jack rafter and a common rafter is the point at which it connects to. So the common rafter connects to the ridge, where the jack rafter connects to the hip. So it is at 90 degrees to the double top plate, whereas you learned previously the hip goes at 45 degrees to your double top plate, up to the ridge. So that is what the jack rafter is. I know we've learned that earlier, but just a reminder and refresher. So now what we need to do is figure out how do we determine the lengths of these jack rafters. So if we go back here, the next thing that we need to learn is what the common length difference is. So if we come back over here, and again, you guys can read through these papers or this book here to help you understand it further if the explanation provided now doesn't help you completely. So the common length difference, what it means is, think of these as common rafters that extended the same length as this last common here. So they're all the same length. What you're doing is we're then taking that hip and we're cutting those common rafters off. And that's because they're spaced equally, we're going to start with 16 on center. Because they're spaced equally between each of these, they get shorter. Each jack rafter gets shorter by the same distance. So let's call it the common length difference as 10 here. So this original common, let's call it 20, or let's call it 60. So this one measured 60 inches. And then because we're working on this 45, this next common, now jack, because it's tying into the hip, is cut off or is 10 inches less than what the common was. So then this one would be 50 inches. Then from this one, you would then subtract your 10 inches, which is your common length difference, so that this one would now be 40, and then 30, and then 20, and then 10. So here is your 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So all we're referring to when we say common length difference is how much shorter they are compared to either the one prior to or the one previous to that actual rafter. So you could start here and say that the first one is 10, and then you could add them, 10 plus 20, or you could work backwards or from the ridge. So they either start from the ridge towards the corner, or you could start from the corner and move towards the ridge. You're just doing the opposite procedure. So this is you're adding from the common difference or adding 2, so 10 plus. And here you're starting with the length of the actual common and you're subtracting. So that is what the common length difference is. So you can look at it here in an actual word definition. So how do we find this information. So the first thing we need to find in order to figure out the length of the jacks is we need to figure out what the length of the common is. So in quick review, because I've heard and know that the math procedures of this class can be challenging. So I'm just going to review this shortly. I know you've been taught on it. If you already know it, you can fast forward through this part. But if you are still learning this, this hopefully will help solidify the processes that we've learned thus far. So we're going to call this run, we're just going to call it 5 feet. Okay? Then we are dealing with a 10 and 12 pitch. So what we need to do is we have what's called the total run, which we just stated is 5 feet. Okay? And then we have our unit run, which our unit run is 12 inches. Our total rise, we don't know, okay? But our unit rise is this right here, so 10 inches. So we're calling this symbol here, this equals our unit. It's the smaller one. The units make up the total. So there's our units that make up our total. So the last thing we have is our actual line length. So we have our unit line length. We're just going to do unit line length. And then we have our total line length. So our unit line length is found on our framing square, which is right there. So unit line length equals 15 point, is that a 6? 15.62 feet per inch. Sorry, inches per foot. So for every foot that we travel on the horizontal, we will be traveling on the diagonal, we will be traveling 15.62 feet or inches. So what we need to figure out is the common length, which is our total line length. So we're going to say that the ridge thickness is 1.5 inches. So we need to take that 5 feet and subtract 3/4 of an inch. So we're going to borrow a foot. So we have 4 feet, and then we have 12 inches in a foot. So now we're going to subtract 3/4. So we know that in 1 inch, let's bring that over here, 4 feet. We'll borrow an inch and make that 4/4. Subtract 3/4. So we have 4 feet, 11 1/4 inch is our total run. And that was subtracting half the thickness of our ridge. So now we need to turn this into decimals of a foot. So to do that, we go to our calculator and we simply work from inches to parts of an inch to an inch to our feet. So that's a foot. So we say 1 divided by 4 gives us our decimal equivalent for 1/4. So 0.25 is the same as 1/4. Then we're going to add our inches, which is plus 11 inches, which is right there. So plus 11. Now, we have 11.25 inches. We need to figure out what this decimal equivalent is of a foot. So to do that, there are 12 inches in a foot. So we're simply going to divide by 12, which gives us 0.9375. So 11 and 1/4 is the same as 0.9375. And now we're going to add our 4 feet plus 4. So now we know that our total run is 4 feet 4.9375 feet. So now what we do is we need to find the diagonal of that, or the total line length. So to do that, all we are going to do is multiply the total run in decimal of a feet times the unit line length to get our answer. So now we multiply times 15.62, whoops, 0.62, and this number equals our total line length. So we have 77 inches. Okay, but we need to figure out what 0.12375 is in fractions of an inch. So we're going to subtract the 77, get rid of it. And now we want to know what part of an inch this represents. So we're going to multiply it by 16 because we broke our inch into 16 parts. So times 16 gives us 1.9. So we're going to say 9 is going to round the 1 up to 2/16, which we're going to reduce to 1/8. So our common length is 77 and 1/8. Now that we know this length, we are now going to go back to our framing square and find what is known as the common length difference. So I'm going to pause the video here as it's getting a little bit long, and I will start another video with our next